Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're on Tuesday this week, mostly because I spent yesterday out at the Glasgow Lady Scotty Invitational Golf Tournament because we do have high school golf. It did tee off on schedule on Friday, and so the Lady Scotties hosted their tournament. We're going to talk more about that in the second segment and talk about the upcoming Barron County Trojanettes Invitational that will be this Saturday at Bend River State Park. But first, one thing that we did talk about last week that was going to happen was Tuesday, the Kentucky High School Athletic Association Board of Control set the parameters for the fall sports that we had all been waiting on to see what would happen. They did push back the start of the fall sports season. The first football game will be September the 11th. The first cross-country volleyball and soccer games will be September 7th. And so then they also backed up the practice schedule. That will begin actual practice schedule will begin August 24th. Basically, right now, they're still on what they refer to as Section 3, I think is what they call it, and it's 6 hours a week workouts for fall sports, and they'll continue, that's voluntary, and they'll continue to do that through August 23rd. So that's kind of the parameters for what we had set up. So, of course, what that meant was some changes to the football schedule because football was supposed to kick off August 21st, and now it won't until September 11th. And I guess real quick, let's talk about the changes in the football schedules. So the football teams lost the first 3 weeks of the season. Part of what happened, though, was most of them had a bye that usually it falls in conjunction with fall break, which is October 9th. Barron's bye was actually October 2nd. So that was an open date for them. And then what they did was they added a date at the end of the regular season, which is November 6th, because they backed up the football playoffs for a week. So that allowed teams to then maybe move one of those first three scheduled games to that November 6th. And that's kind of what Barron did. They moved Metcalfe County to November 6th, and then they picked up Breckenridge County on October 2nd. So that's theirs. Glasgow has not yet filled that November 6th date. They're still holding that open. I think they're trying to, work out a game for that. And then they did fill that October 9th fall break game. They'll be going to Greenwood. So, John, just first of all, when you saw what the KHSAA did, what was your first reaction to that?
Well, it was good news.
Yeah.
It was great news, actually, for sports. Nothing was canceled.
Mm-hmm.
A few games were lost in sports. Only one football game, actually.
Yeah.
They wiped away 3, but you could pick up 2 of those.
Yeah. So you went from a 10-game to a 9-game schedule.
That's correct. They've got the playoffs established, the format, all that. You lose a few soccer games, a few volleyball games, and so forth. But for the most part, the parameters are there, and it was really good news.
Yeah.
August 24th is when practice can get serious in terms of, contact and more like real practices, and you can start making, I guess you could say, cuts and things like that. So,
right.
And I think the 24th is still a moving target, depending on our numbers, our COVID numbers, but it looks like we're doing a little bit better this week than last week. So so that's good news. So all in all, for if you're a fan of high school sports, and more importantly, if you are a high school player, you should be very tickled with the news.
Yeah, you mentioned that a moving target part of that. The KHSAA Board of Control will meet again on August 20th to review this. And look, let's be honest. If there could be changes, the kind of changes I would expect may be the thing that Julian Tackett basically keeps emphasizing, which is so much of this will still fall upon the boards of education in the local districts. So what may go well here in Barron County, Glasgow, Caverna may not be the same, say, in the Lexington area or the Louisville area, that kind of thing. So, or even Bowling Green. We just don't know about that. So there are still some, I think, uncertainties in terms of absolutes, but we do have guidance, and it does look like we will be able to have fall sports, because we had seen the news coming up to last week from other states about them postponing or just moving the fall sports to spring and that kind of thing. I think 3 or 4 states have actually done that, or they've made adjustments based on the size. Like I think Texas did, the classification size of the sport. So the larger ones had to make some adjustments and the smaller ones didn't. So, I mean, we've seen all kinds of different things. So it was good that in Kentucky we have adhered as best we can to a fall sports season. And I think that's a great thing. And you mentioned, the soccer and the volleyball. I think they were originally supposed to start August 12th and August 17th. I think we're supposed to be their first games. So, like in the case of soccer, they kind of lose a month of their season, but there's some adjustments there on the playoffs and that kind of thing as well that allows them to make up some games. And there's no going back to when they can start practice. So,
and you can play more games in a week in volleyball and soccer than you can football. Football is limited to 1 game a week.
Yes.
So the soccer and volleyball can actually – there's still a limitation on games. They did set how many games you could play, and I didn't write it down how many volleyball games you can play and how many soccer games. But those 3 weeks that you lost, teams can play 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Obviously in soccer, and you can actually play more than that in volleyball.
And I think on the games limitation, they kind of basically cut out maybe a week and a half worth of games in terms of cutting back the number of games they could play. But it wasn't so drastic as it looked like it would be.
Right.
So, I mean, that's the upside. I don't remember. I think it was basically a reduction in 7 total games maybe for volleyball and soccer because of the way they made the adjustments to the season itself. To allow a little more on the back end.
Yeah.
And, so anyway, they would have been getting started in their games next week, but that's dropped back some. And back to the practice thing, the other thing, right now they're under a 6-hour-a-week limitation for practice. The players can't have more than 6 hours a week, practice in the workouts. Once the 24th comes, I think it's 7.5 hours. And football is able to not go straight into pads, but they can put on helmets right away, and then a week later they can get into pads. So they can accelerate. They're accelerating a little bit of how their usual practice schedule will be.
Yeah, the 6-hour philosophy, what I can tell is just right now to limit the exposure that the kids have with each other.
Yeah.
And, that can be 3 days a week at 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Or, you can go an hour and a half and spread it out a little bit more.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the philosophy that they took right now. And I think that's fine because right now all you can really do is work on certain skills and condition. Mm-hmm. And after that, practices I would think would be very tedious after a while.
Yeah. I'd say a lot more of what is going on at the moment is allowing coaches the opportunity to have contact with their players on a routine basis so that they can keep them engaged and they can stay, keep them on some sort of schedule, keep them on some sort of routine and not just, let it go all willy-nilly because that would be bad if it went that way and you come back August 24th and you're trying to put everybody back together, so to speak.
Yeah, and they've had them for a while, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
They've had them over a month now, almost 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So I don't think conditioning should be much of should be that big of a deal.
Everybody should be in great shape.
They should be. Now there's a difference between game shape and just running sprints because it's playing soccer or football and things like that. What you do in a game is much different.
Yeah.
So that will take a little bit, but the coaches have actually had their players enough time, I think, right now where the conditioning part they should pick it up pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting situation because of the way that it was set up, and they could start the voluntary workouts on June 15th. Some didn't start till a couple of weeks after that, but because of that, they've really had a more consistent time with their players than they usually would during a season.
They really have.
And so, I think that's but again, we go back to the baseline of that is to maintain that kind of routine and organization for the players, and I'm sure it's good for the coaches as well.
Yeah, and right now there's at least light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for people. There is hope, and right now if you're a football player for Glasgow, right now, you know that September 11th, you have a game with Allen County.
Right.
Which is a rival. And Barron knows right now on September 11th they've got Monroe.
Yeah.
And that's the first game of the year, and that's something that I think they can all start to and same thing with soccer and volleyball and so forth. You have at least something right now that you see is a realistic opportunity. Mm-hmm. Now, can things go haywire? You know, if we know anything in 2020, it can.
Right.
But I do think that there is a pretty strong likelihood that high school sports is going to be played. Now, can it be finished? I don't know that answer, but I think there's going to. I think for the most part, absent another major surge of cases, I think it's at least going to get started.
You know, you and I have mentioned on this show before that to some degree, what we see from professionals in college ranks kind of gives us an indication of what the high schools will face and that kind of thing, and I think it's pretty interesting. You know, the NBA, the NHL went into the bubble, and that seems to be working really well for them.
It's worked perfectly.
Yeah.
The NHL has had neither the NBA or the NHL has had one case since they got to the bubble.
Right. And then the Major League Baseball did not do the bubble, and we've had a couple of teams that have had outbreaks.
But to look at it in a positive way, only two teams.
Right. And truth be told, those two teams have had the outbreaks because they had a couple of players who decided not to follow the guidelines.
That's correct.
And that's what's, put the St. Louis Cardinals and the Marlins on a break at the moment.
That's correct.
So as long as it indicates to us, well, the other side of the Major League Baseball thing is they've said, well, this was the contingency we figured we'd have to deal with, and we're going to try to figure out how to play through it.
That's correct. Of course, they do have the benefit of they test their athletes every day.
That's true.
And most normal people can't do that. High school can't. We just don't have that. I don't even know if colleges per se. Maybe some of the Power 5 can.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily have that same opportunities. But it does show that it can be done. And we've said that all along, that you better hope for your favorite high school and college to play, you better hope that the pros can pull it off, and that's a good sign.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing you better hope is that people take the guidelines seriously.
That's right.
And they do the things they're being asked to do, because we can play if those things are followed. We will have cases.
Yes.
I mean, it's guaranteed it's going to happen. There will be adjustments that will need to be made. I mean, so far, if there's nothing else, the COVID-19 has proved persistent, and there's no way.
Persistent and contagious.
Yeah, both of those, exactly right. But, as you said, the positive news for the Major League Baseball is that we've not had cases on most of these teams at this point. And the two that we have, they've been pretty well easily figured out how they got started.
That's right.
And how, once they got started, why they spread within that team. And even we go back to the Marlins, okay, the teams they've played
did not get it
That's from
right.
the Marlins.
That's right.
So that contact that is needed between team members is part of what allows the spread, but it appears that within the competition itself, it's not so effective at spreading.
That's correct.
So those are the positive things, and so I guess our message is for the high school players and coaches and those kinds of things. Yeah, we want to see you play. We know you want to play. Follow the guidelines. Do this the right way as you're being asked to do, and I believe we'll get through it. And we're going to have some cases, and they will have to be dealt with by the guidelines.
And same thing for the coaches.
Yeah. I mean, just let's follow the guidelines if we really want to be out there.
That's right.
And so far, we seem to be doing okay. Well, this is Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, as we mentioned at the start of the show, high school golf is going on, and things got started on Friday. I went over to Hidden Hills for the Monroe County Falcons Invitational, and watched the boys play some golf over there. Barron and Glasgow over there, Monroe, I think Bowling Green, South Warren, a bunch of teams from the area were over there. And Hidden Hills is a fun course. I mean, it's got some. It's kind of fascinating because you're in Tompkinsville, right? And then you drive a little bit on the edge of town. You take a right, and there's a city park and a golf course, and it really feels like it's in the middle of nowhere.
And it's a nice one too.
It is indeed. I mean, it's it's a surprising golf course. I always think it is every time I go over there, because it's not the kind of golf course you expect to see, I guess, and especially the way it's situated. I think Glasgow and Barron, they both, I don't remember exactly where they placed. You can look on 104thescore.com. I've got a report on there. My memory is slipping as I age, but I think they played okay. Both of them played okay. I imagine they're both looking to improve as the season goes along. Glasgow had an A and a B team, and then Barron had 6 players playing in it, 5 on the team score and 1 individual. So, that was a good start for the season for them.
That was the boys.
Yeah, boys. Yeah. That was boys. The girls also started on Saturday. They played on Friday.
They went up to E-Town.
Yep, they played in the Central Hardin Invitational. They had a 2.5-hour rain delay, so the results were delayed a little bit. Kind of the same thing there. Glasgow and Barron both played in that. I would say both teams would have wanted to do a little better than they did on that particular day. I had both the coaches in here last week, Bart Roberts and Dwayne Withrow, talking about what they expected from the season. And Barron's trying to replace some experience. I mean, they got Bree Russell coming back, but then they've got some younger golfers who are coming up, like Landry Steenberg and those folks. Meanwhile, Glasgow, though, they have some veteran players coming back with Abby Lee and Nina McMurtry, Allie McCoy. Lee and McCoy both made the state tournament last year. Nina McMurtry's played well this summer. And they did okay at the Central Hardin. I think they finished 3rd in that one.
Yes, I think Sacred Heart won it.
Yeah, Sacred Heart won it. And then on Monday, the tournaments they were all supposed to play on Saturday got rained out. So on Monday, the Lady Scotties hosted their invitational, and Abby Lee finished 2nd in that as an individual.
Shot like 75?
75, yep.
Pretty good.
Yeah, she was not all that pleased with that particular score, but she was happier than the one she had Friday because she shot 80 on Friday. And so they finished 3rd as a team in that. And Marshall County.
Marshall and South Warren, right?
Yep, that's right. Yep. So, that's a good start. I think Barron was 7th in that one.
The girl from Marshall shot like 67, right?
Yeah, I think 69 was her final score.
69,
Trinity Burge or something like that.
I think Faith Martin was from South Warren, right?
So Abby Lee finished 2nd at 75. I think Faith Martin and her teammate McKenna Stahl both shot 78.
Okay, that's good.
So I think they tied for 3rd. It may have been one other person in there between them. I don't remember exactly now. But yeah, so good start to the season for them all. They were, I think, Glasgow is playing at Hopkinsville today, and then also there was a boys tournament at Crosswinds Day called the Region 3 Preview, and Barron and Glasgow played in that. The idea was that it was supposed to be a boys regional tournament preview. I'm not sure if they ended up having all of the teams from the region playing in it, though. One of the things that is going on at the moment, there are no shotgun starts. So the tournaments are taking a little longer than they usually would. A lot of them are they're all starting off on one tee, like the first tee, or like at Hidden Hills, they did a 1st and a 10th.
Right.
And so...
Well, the other little golf controversy that's going on in high school that I was reading after the Monroe County put what they did, and they thought this was the safe way to do it, is they put each... You normally don't play as a team per group.
Yeah, right.
In other words, you're going to be matched up with a Barron and a Glasgow and a South Warren and a Warren East will all play together, and it's basically to prevent cheating.
Yeah, the idea is you're 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s.
And they watch each other.
Yeah.
And Monroe, because of COVID, felt like it's better just to keep your own group of kids together, which makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does.
And that's what they did. Mm-hmm. But evidently, the controversy is the organization that's in charge of all state points said you can't. If you play it that way, it's fine, but you're not going to get any type of all state points to do that because they didn't think it was. They didn't. I guess they didn't trust the scoring enough.
Right.
So that was a little controversial. I kind of agree with the Monroe County way. I just think, right now you may just have to live with it. Mm-hmm. But they didn't. The Kentucky, whatever is the scoring
Golf
committee,
House or whatever.
Golf House just thinks it's just, there's not enough oversight.
Yeah, And one of the things that they also did is I think they kind of matched up independent scores with the team so that they had somebody who could kind of check with those players that were going. And I did understand why Monroe County did that, because it does make sense. You all arrive there together, you
play together,
go out, play the course together, get done, leave together. Because that's the other thing that's not going on. You don't have a whole lot of hanging around checking the scores. They're not even hanging up scores at these tournaments.
Right.
They're just live scoring them online, and you're getting them. You can keep up with them if they're getting them posted.
You don't even take the pin out either.
No, right. So I mean, it's there are lots of little changes. But then when I went to the Lady Scotty Invitational, they did the ones, twos, threes, matchups across teams, and one of the discussions was, I mean, they're playing on these tours, these junior tours. And they're playing in
they're used
groups,
to it. Yeah,
that are not with you, don't live in a house with you or go to your school or whatever.
Yep.
And so, but I couldn't. I mean, I did think the Monroe County was not incorrect in the way that they decided to do it. So, further proof that no decision anybody makes is going to be without somebody yelling and screaming about it.
That's true.
But it does. But it was. I mean, it was all odd. You would have thought that a state group would have said, "Yeah, okay, that makes sense."
Ever how you want to do it, we'll take it this year. But they didn't. They just rejected it.
Yeah, that's terrible. I think they need to be. I think they need to review that decision on their part.
It does seem a little harsh.
It does indeed. Meanwhile, the Kentucky Open was last week as well, and Trey Shirley, originally from Metcalfe County, I think he lives over in Bowling Green now, finished second in it. I think he won it 2 years ago, was it? And he had. I don't remember if it was the second to last day or the last day. One of those days, he shot a 63. I mean, he just had a blistering day.
Yeah, and I think he was second by like 2 strokes.
Yeah,
and Kentucky Open is this is where you get paid. I mean, this is a professional deal right here. I think first prize is $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever. But it is have a long history and it's legit.
Yeah,
and Trey's turned into obviously a really good player.
Yeah, Trey was he was a little bit of Mr. Everything when he was in high school. I mean, he did every sport and did it well, so it's not surprising that he's turned into a pretty solid I guess you would call him a semi-pro golfer, because I don't know that he's played some professional events, but the Kentucky Open, it has a mixed match, so you can be an amateur and play in it as well.
You just can't get the prize money if you're an amateur.
Right, yeah, because I think Chase Landrum played in it this year as well, and has for the last couple of years. He's still technically an amateur until he finishes at Western. So, congratulations to those guys and the work they did there. We're not going to have another commercial break before we go to the Reds. When the show ends here today, we'll be cutting out to the Cincinnati Reds.
They're on a hot streak.
They are. I mean, they opened well. Then they had like 2 or 3 games that was very Reds.
Well, they did a first in baseball history.
Was that right?
They swept a 7-inning Major League doubleheader.
Oh.
They were the first team in history to do that. I think it's the first time we've ever done that. And that was at Detroit, where now baseball just on the fly said that now doubleheaders are going to be 7 innings rather than 9.
Yeah.
And the Reds swept Detroit.
They're having to make some decisions on the fly in Major League Baseball.
And then defeated Cleveland last night.
Yep. Yeah, so this is Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. So we're going to make a quick transition over here. We're going to talk about the decisions that the SEC and the ACC made for their fall football schedule specifically. I mean, it affects all fall sports, but football is the one we were paying attention to because of some key rivalries that exist between teams in these conferences, namely for us, Louisville and Kentucky.
It's nothing like college football. There is no... Obviously, there's no governing structure, but it's like each conference is like, I don't know, like a gang member or the old mob. It's just they may work with each other a little bit, but when it comes down to it, each conference did their own thing and is going to do their own thing, regardless of what another conference does. And the NCAA seems to me have no role in football.
Yeah,
they have no role. I don't know what they do in football.
Yeah, I mean, other than offering this playoff system that they have now, because they don't have anything to do technically with the bowls. I mean, it's just, this has been the year of the Wild West when it comes to college sports, especially college football, because you and I both thought, surely after the Big Ten and the Pac-12 decided they were going to play in conference only, you and I both discussed that it seemed logical for the SEC and the ACC to come up with some sort of schedule format because they're so geographically married.
Yeah.
And they have so many overlapped rivalries.
And the ACC did. They threw out the +1.
Yeah, that's right. And then
they play their conference, and you get one more additional game.
Yep.
And the SEC said, no, we'll just play our 10-game schedule.
The SEC said, whatever.
Yeah. We'll just play our own 10 games. Because the SEC's their COVID response is just so much better than everybody else's.
Oh, yeah. All those red-hot states down south.
Yeah, they've got such better testing, evidently, that they couldn't work with others. But it's amazing. I'm just amazed that there's not a plan for everybody, but there's not.
Yeah, I mean, you know what's funny? What's funny is the ACC was able to work out a way for Notre Dame this year to be eligible to play for their conference championship just this year.
Yeah, of course they play basketball and everything else with them too, so that's not a huge jump for them. They're in the conference except for football.
It's not, but there had to be schools in the conference that are like, we don't want to deal with Notre Dame.
They want that NBC contract.
Well, and that's part of the deal. Notre Dame said they would share that money,
right.
that revenue they get from NBC.
Yeah,
so the ACC was like, come on in.
The good news with for Western's sake is it looks like Western has a real shot now to play Louisville.
Yes, that's right.
Because the rule with ACC is that you can play one more, but it has to be within the state.
It has to. Well,
so it comes down to it has to be played in the state.
Yeah, it has to be at the ACC team's state.
Right.
So either they're traveling from outside the state or
and they have
in-state.
Existing contracts with Murray and Western.
Yeah,
and one more school. No, it'd be Kentucky. So Kentucky's out. Mm-hmm. So it's probably going to be Murray or Western, and you would hope it'd be Western for our sakes.
Yeah, that'd be great. That would be. I don't know exactly what that date would be. Sometime in December, I guess, is what I don't remember.
It'd have to be moved. Western, the original date they couldn't be played.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because that and one basically is tacked on at the end of the season,
correct.
Right, for the ACC.
Right, and I would assume Western will play it.
Yeah. So, and by the way, today it was announced that Western's season opener will be postponed. It was supposed to be Thursday, September the 12th, I think it was. And with Chattanooga, and they've come to an agreement. They're going to postpone that game. They've not set when it will be played. So that means Western's opener is going to be backed up a week. I don't know if that's the 21st, maybe that it'll be played now.
Okay.
So, and to that point, Conference USA is still, I think, working out some of its fall schedule related stuff. I think they've gone back. They've changed up maybe the conference schedule, or they will. And I don't know how that's going to, what the guidelines are for that.
Well, they're playing.
They are playing. They definitely said they're playing. We just don't know exactly.
It's not conference only.
No, it's not.
That's right.
And the Sun Belt went to, I think they're playing 8 conference and 4 non-conference.
I think that's what I heard. I think Conference USA is like that, or maybe 3, something like that.
Yeah, so it looks, I wouldn't be surprised if like Conference USA, Sun Belt, maybe the MAC, some of those maybe mirror each other in terms of how they get set up. Because what's going to happen is with these Power Fives basically dropping their teams.
There's 2 conferences that give them an option to play, though.
Yeah.
That's the Big 12 and the ACC.
Right.
They both give the and one option, and I'm sure all those teams in those conferences would love to play, Oklahoma or whoever.
Yeah, travel to one of those places
because it's a money game.
They got to figure out how to make up that $5 million or whatever that money is. And so, we're going to see. We've still not seen the end for Conference USA and those guys about what the schedule is going to look like for football. But back to the SEC and the ACC thing, I just find it so funny that these Power 5 conferences could not work together. I mean, they're all so self-centered, greedy, whatever.
Those things. I don't know.
I mean, you just
now they claim, and maybe it's some truth to it. I don't know. One of the arguments that the Big Ten and the SEC was making is that if we only play within our own conference, not only was the testing everything uniform, which I don't really buy. Sure, it's true, but I don't think the ACC is just I don't know, just throwing dust on them, just coming up with some crazy solution. I would think the ACC would be
eat these sugar pills.
Yeah, but I think what it does is it gives them perhaps some flexibility in terms of the SEC said we're going to play 10 games in 12 weeks in case a school is knocked out for a week because of corona.
Yeah.
Perhaps they can more easily move their games around, and it gives them a little bit of flexibility that way. And I can understand that.
That part did make sense to me, and I had not seen that articulated until I was reading about it today. But I couldn't. We had discussed the only thing that we could understand was just the decision that each of these conferences wanted to have total control over their teams. And over their institutions, which makes sense.
Right.
But, yes, that discussion about actually having some sort of flexibility within schedules makes perfect sense.
How would you like to be Missouri and Vanderbilt and Arkansas this year? And your schedule is 10 SEC games.
Yeah. I mean,
you better hope they play each other.
Yeah. Well, and not just look, they all decided to get in the conference.
well, Vanderbilt's in it for the money anyway.
Yeah.
But still, my goodness.
Missouri's Johnny come lately to the SEC, and so they I sure hope they decided they wanted to have the opportunity to play Alabama and Auburn and LSU all on the same calendar year. You don't think?
Long year.
Yeah, yes, it is. And that's the other thing about the ACC. I don't know. It just struck me that the ACC took a more universal approach to this. Where it was, we want our teams to play football. We do want this flexibility in the schedule, but we want to let them make some decisions too.
And to me, they also recognize fan interest.
Yeah.
They wanted Kentucky and Louisville to continue to play. South Carolina and Clemson's been playing 100 years.
Yep.
Florida and Florida State.
Yeah, Georgia
and Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
They were keeping those things open for them.
Yeah.
And the SEC just, I guess, didn't. Maybe it is more schedule flexibility. I don't know.
Yeah. I didn't see one of the things talking about schedule flexibility. I did not see that they had opened up the schedule, so to speak.
Yeah, they could have just widened it.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
widen it to a couple more. I don't know why they have to end on a certain day.
Yeah.
They're the SEC. If they want to play through Christmas, play through Christmas, right?
Hey, an LSU Alabama game on Christmas Day would give the NBA a run for its money.
Yeah, that's true.
But I just don't like. Why not go from September 12th to December, 23rd or whatever?
Don't give me semester finals, please.
Yeah, well, Alabama doesn't play in a bowl game before December, so they don't have to worry about that.
That's where they don't. And I don't. Do you really believe bowl games are going to be played this year?
Man,
they're going to ship teams across the country, and I don't. I think there'll be a playoffs, but I don't see a lot of bowl games.
On that particular note, the thing about the bowl games,
they shouldn't have them anyway.
that's
another positive change.
Opportunity to cut down about 20 of them.
That's right.
But I just think on the financial side of the things, when it comes to the bowl games, is going to be part of the difficulty because of the sponsorships that are required to even make these things happen to start with.
Yeah, they do rely on fan attendance.
Yeah, and we saw last year, what was it, some like 50% of the non-major ones are basically running on a deficit anyway. They're just being held to be held, it would seem. And so, it's probably a boon for the tourism and that kind of stuff in some of the cities where they're held, but
not if they're not allowed to be traveled to.
Yeah, so there are lots of reasons bowl games could be on the chopping block.
I won't miss that one.
I
will say I have enjoyed. I think the sports has been played so far has been pretty good.
Yeah,
the NBA has. Now, they don't look like they're guarding people a lot, but I think they're playing hard. And they've got the arena set up. It looks good. I've been very impressed with baseball. So far, I've been extremely impressed.
You know what? You and I talked about this about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, where he talked about whether or not the professional players would be excited about getting back on the field, and through that excitement, put forth more effort than we usually see from them.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that's been the case.
Yeah, and it's kind of worked out too, where players have opted out, so you've gotten the people that don't want to be there aren't really there.
Right. Yeah. And some people are getting some opportunities.
That's right. In football,
T.J. Warren is a guy. Man, he's been lighting it up in the NBA.
In football, I think they've been surprised in football. There's been a lot more people that's opted out in football than I can ever imagine.
Yeah.
But it's not going to stop them from playing.
No, it's just
you can get football players.
Yeah, there are people. There are people
and
driving milk trucks.
No quarterbacks have opted out. No star receivers. No star running backs. It's a lot of defensive players and linemen.
Yeah. Well, it's an excellent opportunity for Bill Belichick to dig up some people that people have never heard of and turn them into all pros.
Because he's lost a ton of players.
Yes, he has, especially on the defensive side.
Yes.
Well, we are about to get out of here, John. I want to, again, Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. Thank you, Steve Goodson, for continuing the sports show.
Yes.
We will be back on Monday next week. No golf tournament that I'll be at next week. And here come the Reds.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.